Hey guys, what's going on? This is Siddharth here, and in this video I want to talk about something really important, something that happened a few days ago and something that really shook the Next.js world from its core. So I'm talking obviously about the middleware security vulnerability which recently happened, and I'm just gonna talk about that in this video and share my own opinions. I wanna make something really clear. This video is not about just going to bash Vercel for what they did and just tell that, hey, Vercel is bad, use Cloudflare instead. No, I'm not gonna do all that all on this video. I have made tutorials for doing stuff. So if you wanna see how to deploy stuff, and I'm just gonna keep creating videos on all of these platforms. I think all of them are really great. In this video, I'm just gonna share my own personal opinion on the vulnerability and Next.js in general, what I think about it, and everything in general. So yeah. I might also try out the vulnerability in this video, not sure. Let's see. So I'm going to show you the CVE published for this vulnerability by the Next.js team. So let's go here. So this article is written by Lee Robinson. He's a legend in the Next.js world. So yeah, it says Next.js version 15.2.3 has been released to address a security vulnerability. Additionally, backported patches are available. We recommend that all self-hosted Next.js deployments using next start and output standalone should update immediately. Continue reading for more details on this CVE. So they have a rough timeline. So I think the 15.2.3 is the good version. So they got this on 27th February via GitHub private vulnerability reporting, and the Next.js team started triaging the report so late. I think this is why a lot of people are mad on Twitter, because they started taking this seriously too late. Well, to be fair, it was a private one. I think if this vulnerability has been out for a very long time, people have been taking advantage of it anyways. I don't think that is really that big of a deal, to be honest. But yeah, like taking this long for this kind of security vulnerability is really not that great. Patch pushed for Next.js 15. Yeah. Then all of this happened. Then security advisory published. Yeah. I think it's fine. It's just like people are mad about how it took a long time for Next.js team to get this out, and also the way they are communicating, and that's the sentiment of people on Twitter, to be honest. So yeah, vulnerability details. Next.js uses an internal header X middleware sub request to prevent recursive requests from triggering infinite loops. The security report showed it was possible to skip running middleware, which could allow requests to skip critical checks such as authorization, cookie validation before reaching routes. Impact scope. All self-hosted applications using middleware next start with output standalone. So basically, if you're using self-hosted Next.js, you need to update right now, or else you are also affected by this. But it is not that bad. I'm gonna get to that, but it is still bad. It is not that bad. I'm gonna get to that. Just wait for it. This affects you if you rely on middleware for auth or security checks, which are not then validated later in your application. This is a really important point, which are not then validated later in your application, which I'll get back to. Applications using Cloudflare can turn on or managed WAF rules. Not affected applications hosted on Vercel, hosted on Netlify, and which are exported as static exports. So yeah, they also have the patched versions. They have patches for everything till back to Next.js 12. So you can just update your version. If patching to a safe version is infeasible, it is recommended that you prevent external user requests which contain the X middleware sub request header from reaching your Next.js application. So I think this is what these platforms are doing right here. Applications hosted on Vercel and Netlify. Even if you don't update your Next.js version, what are these these hosting platforms doing? They are basically blocking any external request which contains this header. This header is an internal header and should only be used within the Next.js environment. So they are simply blocking this request. And what happened is, like, Cloudflare did something and it basically broke Superbase and other things as well. And it was a complete mess. I don't want to talk about it. People were fighting on Twitter. It was wild. But yeah, so basically any middleware, basically any request to middleware containing this header basically bypasses the middleware. So what does it mean? If you have a authentication layer in a middleware and then you have an application behind it, you are gonna get affected. But this is not that bad, because what they are saying here is this affects you if you rely on middleware for auto security checks, which are not then later validated in application. So if you are using something like middleware to just do some cookie checks, so basically if you are just using middleware to see if a cookie exists or not, or if the user in the cookie exists or not, and you are not doing any database calls at all, and you're just later on just routing based on the decision made by your middleware, you will not be affected, because at the end of the day you are simply using your API, or you are using RSCs to do the validation again and see if the user is authorized. Remember that there's a difference between authentication and authorization, and you need to really understand that. So the authorization part, if you're not doing it in the middleware layer, and if you're just doing the authorization part in the middleware layer and not anywhere else, you are going to be affected by this. But if you are using the middleware just for checking the cookies and stuff, even if somebody bypasses your middleware, all they are going to see is a static HTML shell, which is basically going to be just normal shell, because at the end of the day your authentication provider or whatever you're using for auth is just going to deny you completely, like, hey, this is not an authenticated request, so the access to data is denied. So yeah, this is what the security vulnerability is all about. I wanna try to show you how this works. I don't really know how exactly it does, so I'm gonna need to play around with this myself and show you. But after I'm done with that, I'm also going to share my personal opinions on this vulnerability and basically Next.js in general. I'm gonna save you some time. If you're here looking for some drama, this video is not going to be that. Just skip. If you're looking for some constructive opinion from my side, stick around till the end. So yeah. Alright, before we proceed with this, I just want to give you a disclaimer. This is just for educational purposes. I don't want you to go ahead and just attack any website you want. This is just for you to know how this works. This is a channel where I teach about code, and I just want to tell you how this works. So don't attack anyone, please. So basically this is just a Next.js application which I created. I created it on Next.js 15.1, which the vulnerability exists in this version as well. So what I have done in page.tsx, a normal Next.js page, and then I also have middleware.ts here, which basically has all the things. It's basically just by default it just sends your request to /401, which is basically a 401 page I made using cursor. So basically technically any request you go, if you go to localhost 3000, just hit enter, you will be redirected to 401. So this is what the middleware is doing here. It's just basically denying every request and sending it to this page. So technically we are simulating here is a page which is containing some secret value that only authorized users can see, and a middleware which is protecting that value. And now what we can do is we can just go to HTTP IE, which is basically just like a postman. But I want to show you something. If I just send the request normally, you can see the 401 page. But now we have X middleware sub request, and we have this middleware here. If we just enable this header and send this, now you can see that your Next.js homepage is visible. You no longer get redirected to your 401 page. Now why is this happening? What if I just remove all of this? Why is this middleware? It does not make any sense, right? The reason it is here is because Next.js determines if it runs the middleware by using the value here. So what happens is that whenever you run the middleware, the path of the middleware is added here. So here we are just using middleware right here. But if you have an src directory, it could be something like src/middleware. And then whenever you run subsequent middlewares, it just gets added here through colon. So I think the max limit, I don't understand the Next.js code base too well, but I think the max limit is 5 before it just starts to skip middlewares and just show you the content to avoid recursion here. So I have 5 middlewares here already, so Next.js determines that it's a recursion thing, and if we are in a loop, and we should probably not do this. And now if you just hit send here, you just see your page. Now I just want to see that this is patched or not. I'm just gonna go here, I'm gonna open my terminal. Let me just bring my terminal here, hold on. Okay, now I'm gonna just go ahead and install Next.js, not Next.js, sorry, Next. I hope this upgrades our next version. Yeah, installed Next.js 15.2.4. Now we can do bun dev again. This should be the version which is patched and does not have stupid things. Now we can just go back here and try to send this request again. Transaction in progress. Yeah, now we see this one. Now no matter how many times we have this, it's still going to do the same thing, which is great. Now it's patched. So if you're using self-hosted Next.js, you should be upgrading your next version ASAP without any delays. Or if you're using Vercel already on Netlify or any other things like Cloudflare, you're basically already covered, I think. So I don't think about if you're covered in Cloudflare, I think they reverted the changes because things are breaking. But in Vercel, you should be already covered. You should not be affected at all, because what Vercel is doing, it's basically just blocking this on their infra side. So you should not get affected by this, which is a very good thing about infra providers. They just basically block such vulnerabilities when they are introduced as soon as possible. And that's one pain point when you're using self-hosting, is that you need to be on top of your game when it comes to updating your packages and staying up to date with all the vulnerabilities. Some of these vulnerabilities, like this one, could be like really bad if you just ignore them. So yeah. Now about my opinions. Let's go back. All right. Why I think this is not that bad, because I have a few opinions that could be so bad that you might be flaming me in the comment section. I think that this is not that bad because you probably should not be authenticating your users just in the middleware. There are many reasons for that, but one reason being that if you're authorizing, for my wording earlier, but if you're authorizing your users in your middleware, you're basically blocking the page from loading. If you're making some DB calls in the middleware itself, your entire page is not going to load. It's just going to be a stupid loading spinner or something like that. Instead, if you just check cookies or something like that, check if a cookie exists or not, and just redirect the user back to the app as soon as possible, that problem is not there anymore. You have an instantaneous page load and you are at the desired page. If you don't use a middleware in this case, to be honest, what would happen is that the page with the unauthorized content will load. It will not have all the content, but it will take some time for it to redirect back to the login page. And I think middleware really shines in that. The thing is that the people who are affected here are the people who relied solely on middleware. I don't know how many people really do that, because if you want to get some data from the database, I don't think middleware is the place you really want to do it. And that's if you're only using it for authorization, I think you should have a way for your user to get authorized before they are able to fetch data from the database. Now, there is a possibility that you are using React server components, and that really makes things complicated, because if you're using middleware, you would say like, why would I even care about these things? I already have a middleware protecting my routes. I do not really care about speeds at all. I just want to make this little app and I just want to make money. So in that case, I think you're screwed. You need to update your Next.js version ASAP. It is bad. The vulnerability is bad. I'm not protecting Vercel here. I think that this is really bad. This should not have happened. I think many sites will be affected. I'm not saying that. I'm not going to be that guy who's saying that none of the websites are affected. Even if a small example project is affected, that's still one affection. I think this vulnerability should not have happened, but again, like, nobody's safe from vulnerabilities, right? Everyone is going to suffer one day or the other. Everyone is going to get hit by a security vulnerability that's going to affect the logic, business logic in some way, or they are just going to get exploited in some way, you know. That's it. I think that Next.js team could have done a better job with communication and stuff, and with how much time they have taken to like patch this. I think this should have been the number one priority and should not have taken more than 14 days. Um, yeah, but my opinion is still that it's not really that big of a deal. I don't think many people really do that. Which brings me to the topic of my personal Next.js opinions in general, about React server components, about server side and coupled backends and stuff. I think this vulnerability would really affect you if you're using a coupled backend and front end, which is basically the idea of the entire Next.js thing, is that you use your Next.js as a server as well. You use React server components, you do server side computation, you hit the database in the server component itself. This all looks cool, but hear me out. I think this blurs a line between the client and server a lot. There are people who might hear what I say and say that, who cares about all of that stuff right now? You have dev tools that are easier, and it just makes you feel better and just makes your shipping time fast. But you need to understand, in the age of vibe coding, people do not understand how things work, and they are going to make things which are vulnerable and which don't really make sense. They don't understand what is a client, what is a server. They can go ahead and do some business logic on the client side, and they won't even understand it until somebody exploits them, which is pretty easy to do if you're doing something like that on the client side. With Next.js, I think I watched Mehul Mohan's video on this, and I agree with him. What he said it's like Next.js is a black box. Of course, it's open source, but nobody really bothers to check what's happening unless you are like hardcore Next.js fan or hardcore Next.js contributor or something like that. Which really says that you don't really know the inner workings of Next.js. Until now, we used to think that middleware is something that is going to be run every single time. There are no exceptions, but nobody knew that there's an option to like skip the middleware running altogether, right? So that's crazy. But yeah, that's my opinion. I think that when it comes to small application, RSCs and all are good, but when it comes to big applications, I would rather just decouple my front end and back end and have a completely separate backend. If you had a completely separate backend during this vulnerability, you will not get affected because your web app still needs to get authenticated to view some data from the server. So that's my opinion. Feel free to disagree. Let me know in the comment below what you feel about all of this entire situation. I think this is bad, but it's not that bad. It's blowing out of proportions, to be honest. People are just hating now. Like, I think people are using this vulnerability as a way to promote themselves, or a way to bring Next.js team down. Next.js has a lot of haters because they have a very opinionated way of doing something, which is not really that well accepted in the React world. So I think Next.js is cool. I don't think that Next.js is bad. I won't ask you to just get rid of Next.js, go to something like Vite or something like that. Vite is also good. TanStack Start is also good. By the way, video on TanStack Start is coming really soon. Stay tuned. And Next.js is also cool. All of them serve different purposes. Find what works for you. Security vulnerabilities can happen all the time. That's just my opinion. So I think enough of yapping for this video. I have shared what was on my mind. I have shared you how the vulnerability works. I also shared you how an attacker could get rid of your middleware altogether, and told you how unrealistic it is for many people to get affected by this on real world applications. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you really liked it. You find it informational. I won't really edit this video a lot. I won't make cuts to what I say, so there are going to be a lot of stutters here, so just bear with me. Subscribe to this channel if you really like my content, and if you want to see some more things about web. I'm going to start posting my opinions of web a lot more often, and if you want to see tutorials on web, especially the TanStack tutorial, which I'm going to post really soon, hit the subscribe button. It really supports me a lot. And yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.